and welcome back to episode 4 of Poetry Reading with Tuesday. I am your host, Tuesday. This poem is titled Dumbo Hatter, and so I'll read it and then we will get into it. This wasn't falling up, it was falling over and falling out of my rocking chair into graveyards full of pixie dust. You could see stars through the awning there. As I stargazed on Parisian-style terrace, she had a yawning stare. Corpse bride, are you under weather? You seem sad with a calming flare. Lost marbles, smoking whales, crocodiles, and tea for breakfast. First dates on a frozen tundra, only so you could see I'm breathless. Darling dear, let us run away to a place where they make brie and fetch us Bordeaux from 80s vintage, where both the heat and breeze are precious. In the gaze of giants, I'll build you kingdom that no longer has need for hedges. Build you boat that can ride waves for 40 days where the seas are treacherous. Galaxy of your countenance that makes my heart heave impetuous. Renaissance, you revival my wintered soul and make it seethe electric. So again, this poem is titled Dumbo Hatter. And so this poem I kind of wrote in the spirit of I have these different styles of poems that I like to write, and some of them kind of fall into this genre style category that I deem or label as quirky, Mad Hatter-ish, Dr. Seuss-ish, Shel Silverstein-ish. It has this off-kilter, quirky, kind of psychological dissonance element to it, where it feels like the movie Alice in Wonderland, when Alice first, as an adult, descends into Wonderland and things are kind of off and she's disoriented by all these different characters she's meeting, and then eventually stumbles upon tea with the Hatter. And so, I mean, clearly the Hatter idea, the Mad Hatter idea is an inspiration and an influence that I'm tipping my hat to, in the title being Dumbo Hatter. Dumbo being a moniker that I use, and then Hatter being a combination of my moniker and the character Mad Hatter from the movie Alice in Wonderland. And so this, just getting right into it, into the breakdown, background, explanation, it's talking about this whole poem is kind of describing almost it's not a psychotic episode, but for lack of a better phrase, for me to understand it through, it's almost it's trying to explain a psychotic episode. Almost like if you imagine that Mad Hatter's character in the Alice in Wonderland movie, and he's in this, he has these moments. He has moments of fluidity where he's there and he's speaking to Alice, and you're oh, he's coherent and he's fluid and he's there with you. But then there's moments breaks where he seems to be in an entirely other psychological state. And so it's like an episode he goes through. And this is kind of describing an episode, or kind of even describing the way the Hatter presents in that movie, where it's you're there, you're cognizant, you're present, but then you go in and out of episodes. So it starts off with me describing what is going on. This wasn't me falling into an episode, and this idea of falling up. So the first line says, "This wasn't falling up, this was falling over and falling out of my rocking chair." Falling up is a play on the book title of a poetry book by author Shel Silverstein, where he writes a book called Falling Up. So it's saying it's beyond this idea of the quirkiness of a Shel Silverstein. This wasn't just falling up, this was falling over and falling out of my rocking chair. It's from this, I think it's a British phrase where it says you're off your rocker, you're mad, you've gone completely mad, you're off your rocker. This wasn't falling up, this was falling over and falling out of my rocking chair into graveyard. Now we're in this fantasy land. Into graveyards, place of death, full of pixie dust, but magical and mystical and whimsical. contrasting these two ideas, juxtaposing these ideas of this place that I'm in. Kind of like, again, the place that the Mad Hatter exists when Alice descends into Wonderland as an adult. Falling out of my rocking chair into graveyards full of pixie dust, you could see stars through the awning there. Like these, you know what an awning is, A-W-N-I-N-G. Anyway, you could see stars through the awning there as I stargazed on Parisian-style terrace. She had a yawning stare. Now we're introducing a love interest, who I refer to as Corpse Bride. Are you under weather? You seem sad with a calming flare. If you've ever seen the movie Tenet, the wife of the Russian arms dealer, who, like, when she's first introduced as a character, she kind of has this, like, poise and composure and decorum that seems sad but, like, calming, and it kind of prepossessed by something. As I stargazed on Parisian-style terrace, she had a yawning stare. My corpse bride, are you under weather? You seem sad with a calming flare. Lost marbles, smoking whales, crocodiles, and tea for breakfast. First dates on a frozen tundra, only so you could see I'm breathless. So this idea of lost marbles in the Hook movie, which is an iteration of the Peter Pan story, I think there's a character named Toodles who seems mad in the movie. He seems crazy. He seems like a lunatic. Like he's always searching for his marbles. And later on in the movie, they'll introduce the idea that Toodles, I think it's Toodles, when he was a kid, Peter, who was childhood friends with him, their friends stole Toodles' marbles. So now that he's like this old, very old man, he's constantly talking about his marbles that he lost. But when he was a child, they actually stole them from him. So, like, but he seems crazy to the outside world, but there's something very real that feels lost inside of him, that is lost from his possession that he's searching for. But in searching for that, people kind of just think he's crazy. And then smoking whales comes from the idea of Pinocchio. Like, I'm talking about these psychological ideas going on in my person. This idea of seeming crazy to the outside world, and the lost marbles, seeming crazy to the outside world by searching for something that feels lost to me, like lost marbles, which is one element. Lost marbles, smoking whales, crocodiles, and tea for breakfast. There's 4 elements. Smoking whales is the whale from Pinocchio that Pinocchio has to go into in order to rescue Geppetto. Dragons that you have to confront in life, seemingly insurmountable foes and oppositions that you have to face and inevitably deal with at some point or another if you want to move forward. Crocodiles, like the crocodile from Peter Pan. So again, tying back to the Lost Marbles idea, using a Peter Pan thematic idea. The crocodile of time that took Captain Hook's hand. Lost marbles, smoking whales, crocodiles, and tea for breakfast. Just going to this idea of Alice, you're late for tea, Mad Hatter. First dates on a frozen tundra, only so you could see I'm breathless. This idea of being so in love with someone, my corpse bride, who in this story is the love interest, being so in love with someone that they take your breath away. So saying, like, look how romantic of me, my corpse bride. The reason I chose a frozen tundra, the worst possible place for a first date, the reason I chose this place was to be romantic, as a romantic gesture. And you go, so that you could see that you take my breath away, because you can't see in this cold place where you usually can see breath, that you've taken my breath away. Darling dear, let us run away to a place where they make brie and fetch us. I love using Parisian and Italian style references. So even back earlier in the poem where I talk about falling into this graveyard, pixie dust, illuminated place, kind of this juxtaposed place of death and whimsical magic, ethereal, whimsical magic, but also a place of a graveyard. And I said you could see stars through the awning there as I stargaze on Parisian-style terrace. And then we come back to this European, Italian, Parisian-style thematic ideas. Darling dear, let us run away to a place where they make brie, like brie cheese, and fetch us Bordeaux, a wine from 80s vintage, where both the heat and breeze are precious. Let us run away to this imaginary castle place, or this imaginary estate, this cottage on the Italian countryside, where we eat cheese and drink vintage wines, in such a place where even the heat of summer and the cool the breeze, the cool of the breeze are, they're not disturbing, they're not bothersome, they're not an inconvenience, they're like just right. And then I go into this other vision where I say, well, I'm kind of inviting this love interest to come and run away with me to this imaginary place, away from these dragons, these crocodiles, smoking whales, lost marbles, and tea, from this place of psychological dissonance and issues that I'm confronting and facing. I'm speaking to my corpse bride, inviting her, saying, come run away with me to this other place. And in that place, in the gaze of giants, giants being just a metaphor for seemingly insurmountable obstacles in your life, threats, beasts and villains, and the danger that lurks on the boundaries and on the outskirts of where you live. In the gaze of giants, I'll build you kingdom that no longer has need for hedges. Hedges being this idea of like protection. I'll build you a place of dwelling that exists in a territory that seems wild because there's giants there, and yet in this kingdom that I'll build for you, there won't be a need for like protective walls. We'll be free there and at peace. And then from that place, I'll build you boat. We'll go on romantic adventures. We'll brave the seas. We'll become seafaring people. I'll build you boat that can ride waves for 40 days where seas are treacherous. This idea of 40 days. Just the idea of 40 being a repetitive number in the Bible. I don't think Noah was in the ark for 40 days, but this idea of 40 days being the fast that Moses has on the mountain when he meets with God, 40 days being a fast that I believe Elijah took. 40 being the number of a generation in the script. Build you a boat that can ride, that can endure long things. I'll build you a boat that can ride waves for 40 days where the seas are treacherous. From the place of our kingdom that we build in a place that no longer has need for protection, we'll then still take on adventurous journeys. We'll go and we'll find wild seas and wild waves and travel the world. We'll still at spirit and at heart be adventurous. I'll build you a boat that can ride waves for 40 days where seas are treacherous. Why? Why am I inviting you into all the galaxy, my corpse bride, the galaxy of your countenance that makes my heart heave impetuous? You heave and hold my heart impetuous. You put me in such a volatile state romantically. Galaxy of your countenance that makes my heart heave impetuous. Renaissance, you revive my wintered soul and make it seethe electric. Like Renaissance, you rebirth in me this state of hibernation that I'm in. Renaissance, my rebirth, you revival my wintered, my hibernating, my cold, my sombered, my tundrad soul and make it seethe electric. You electrify me and make me feel alive. Yep. And so that is Dumbo Hatter. That is episode 4. I'll do one more pass of the poem and we will close this out. This wasn't falling up, this was falling over and falling out of my rocking chair. Into graveyards full of pixie dust, you could see stars through the awning there. As I stargazed on Parisian-style terrace, she had a yawning stare. Corpse bride, are you under weather? You seem sad with a calming flare. Lost marbles, smoking whales, crocodiles, and tea for breakfast. First dates on a frozen tundra, only so you could see I'm breathless. Darling dear, let us run away to a place where they make brie and fetch us Bordeaux from 80s vintage, where both the heat and breeze are precious. In gaze of giants, I'll build you kingdom that no longer has need for hedges. I'll build you boat that can ride waves for 40 days where the seas are treacherous. Galaxy of your countenance that makes my heart heave impetuous. Renaissance, you revive my wintered soul and make it seethe electric. That is episode 4, and I will see you guys next time for episode 5.